Committee of the Whole is called to order. We are on round two. Colleagues, Mr. Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for returning. Actually, there's only three primary areas that I want to focus on. Is first off, GDOE, then the Attorney General, and then the health insurance. Okay, but so let's go down the line here. Mr. Byrne yesterday had asked that, while this is, I guess, the desire to be able for, and I understand, and I appreciate that for efficiency and to bring the responsibility of managing the finances for GDOE under DOA. When I asked you the question of, okay, does this include the governing authority and those authorities necessary to be able to do this, recognizing that that authority was transferred back when we had given them that responsibility, and you said the statute or the way it's written remains silent. Do you have any suggested language?
Yes, Speaker, thank you. I have been thinking about that since you brought the matter up yesterday morning. But can I just backtrack a little?
Sure.
And, what's in the bill is a solution. It's not, I guess, the only solution, but it's the solution that comes from the fiscal team who have to experience the issues that happen when we're trying to produce financial figures and audits. So as we stand today, I still don't have any figures from DOE, so I can't offer to this body, to the governor, or to rating agencies an estimate of the general fund, because I have no idea what the results from DOE are. This is an attempt to resolve that part of it, right? As you know, I'm an accountant. My interest is getting accounting numbers that are reliable and helpful. Ironically, in the DOA Enabling Act, there is a responsibility on the Director of Administration to provide an education to all students. I don't know why it's there. I've often wondered what I can do actually to carry out that mandate, and this is part of it, I guess. With respect to your specific question, the budget already provides that appropriations to DOE are exempt from BBMR control. It's already in there. So who does control the appropriations to DOE? And I think the answer is the legislature does. What the wording that's been proposed was simple wording, just to make them subject to the Central Accounting Act. I think the budgetary part is already addressed. That would have to be addressed every year because it's part of the budget. But wording that indicates that the policy and operational control remains with, and I'm not really sure whether it's with the executive of DOE or the board, and that's something that maybe needs further discussion. I think wording to that effect would possibly satisfy the whole situation. I have been in touch with the superintendent this morning, and I asked her, well, is it working now? That's the kind of question I think needs to be asked. And her answer was, well, yes, it is, but it only works, and this is paraphrasing, it only works because the internal audit department is involved in the finalization of the financial statements. That's not really good practice. It's practical, I guess. It does produce an answer, but that's not really good practice. And maybe that organization needs to be looked at, but that's a matter for her, not me. I'm just interested in getting the right numbers at the right time.
Mr. Speaker, there has been, and colleagues, there has been distributed a document that is the questions being answered that Senator Gumatauto asked about DOC. Would you like to take a short recess to review this in case you have any questions?
Please.
Okay, I don't want to waste your, or, take your time and you're not aware of this document. So we'll take a 1-minute recess. Speaker, when you've reviewed this document, in case you have any questions on it, we'll go back in. We are in a short recess. The Committee of the Whole is now called back to order. Mr. Speaker, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the recess. Thank you for the information. Nice to know. I go back to the discussion. So you know, Mr. Byrne, I agree that there seems to be an issue and concern with how we manage the finances of the Guam Department of Education. This appears to be, and this is a suggestion, okay, of a solution, a proposed solution for this. But I think that we can also agree that it's more complicated than just the language provided here and there are things that need to be hashed out. And it's not to say that I don't agree with it. It's just that I think there are still some of the I guess the authorities and responsibilities, so we make sure that it's not assumed. We want to make sure that people who know who got that responsibility have that responsibility. It's in statute.
Yes, sir. I mean, no one could argue with making clear who's responsible
Right.
for what. That's
Yeah.
obviously a sensible approach.
Because I think that for many times, we look to you because the assumption is that this is DOA's responsibility, or
Well, yes, and sometimes, often, we have to take responsibility for things that really
Absolutely.
aren't ours, but we want to make sure that it works.
Okay.
And also, and it just mentioned that both the external auditors and the OPA have from time to time mentioned that this would be a solution.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is, and I'm going down by your, Lester, Mr. Carlson, listing that you, okay? We're going. Next one is the duties of the Attorney General and the request to increase the procurement threshold from $500,000 to $5 million. First off, when you take first glance at it and you go from $500,000 to $5 million, first thing is like, okay, why? Okay, and so, and as you had articulated yesterday, there are many of the contracts that sit idle for one reason or another within the AG's office. However, where do we come up with this $5 million figure?
We took a look at the amounts of contracts that were up there, and we basically said, if we just revise the amount from $500,000 to $5 million, there would be a lot more contracts that were more expediently processed, and only the larger ones, the ones that are over $5 million, would require his review as to form. So we did take a look at numbers just to make sure that it wasn't arbitrary.
Do you have a breakdown of right now what contracts are held or are still in abeyance with the AGs or within the system that are between the 500,000 and the 5 million?
We could probably get that for you, sir. As you might know, I only have stuff that is within my purview. So like DOE stuff, things like that, I wouldn't have. But after I sign off, it goes to the AG, and I can get my staff to do a recap for the fiscal year to see what it was that we approved, and whether or not they were ultimately routed back to the governor for signature. So yes, we'll get you that.
And I appreciate it because, again, if not 5 million, what is a compromise?
Understood. We'll get you that.
And I would like to be able to see is of those. Let me put it 2.5 from 500,000 to 2.5 million and 2.5 to 5 million. Is recognizing first off who's got it and where and for what. You can say that at least 70% of your agencies are not going to have any contracts, okay, in excess of 2.5, anywhere in the 2.5 to 5 million. What are those contracts that are in that range that seem to be held up, and why? I'm just trying to wrap why 5 million, okay? So I need to be able to do this.
Mr. Speaker, could I just also point out
Sure.
that there are a number of contracts not within the executive branch at autonomous agencies and other places that would fall into this bracket too.
Right.
And the AG maintains a website. It's not terribly easy to sort them out from there, but I will have my staff try and sort out those that fall
That would be
into that
most
bracket.
appreciated.
Yeah.
That would be most appreciated. Okay, because again, like I said, when 5 million jumped out, I'm like, wait, why? Okay, so I appreciate that. Okay, move on to the next one. It's actually now is in the area of the request to make some changes within the Guam Health Insurance Program. You know, in our discussion yesterday, Mr. Byrne, we were talking basically about the claims and where, while the proposal here is to add the language of having permitting for third-party administrators and not so much the health insurance itself or the program itself. How has the claims process been working out?
This is the process that is currently in practice. The TPA sends a list of claims twice a month. They then draw from the appropriate bank account that's maintained for this fund the totality of those claims. So they agree the claims with the provider, they scrub the claims with the provider, and then they send us a list and draw out of our account the amount of that list twice a month.
Okay. Has there been any problems or has there been any problematic concerns, issues with regards to the claims process
No. I mean, occasionally a provider may have an issue with the TPA about the way the claim was adjudicated, and I know there's a couple of our providers who were concerned that their claims were downgraded. You know, when you go to a physician, there's a CPD code that indicates the severity of the visit, if I could put it that way. And some of those claims were downgraded by the provider, but we have taken care of that. But as far as the cash flow is concerned, no problem.
Okay. So separate it out between medical and dental. I mean, medical, dental, and pharmaceutical, right?
For fiscal 27, it's 3 TPAs, yes.
There's 3 TPAs.
Yes.
What has it been practiced in the past?
The pharmacy and medical had 1 TPA.
Okay, so pharmacy and medical had 1, and then the dental had the...
Yes, yes. Now, you know, when the bid goes out, TPAs can bid for, in the past, they could bid for medical, dental, or medical and dental. And when they price it, the team adjudicated the bids, and for the past 2 years, it was cheaper to separate the 2 out. And so that was the decision that was made.
Okay, so, and as you stated, you've already finished, what process are you in right now for the upcoming fiscal year?
For fiscal year 27, it's complete. We sent a notification. The governor, who has the ultimate decision on it, signed off, and we sent a notification to the legislature that we had completed the process for fiscal 27.
And that process was for an annual...
Yes, sir.
Annual contract.
Yes, sir.
What you're asking here is you already have that ability for, I guess, for the plan, but what you're looking for here is for the ability to have a multi-year contract with a third-party administrator.
We only have the ability with the consultant. actuary to have a multi-year contract. The plan under current legislation is limited to single years.
Okay. Okay. Because, and the reason why I'm asking this is because the way the proposal, and as far as this way it's worded, you can almost have a 3-year plan for your coverage and a 1-year plan for your TPA, or vice versa. Right?
This is, I think this is the goal, is to be able to enter into a 3-year contract with the TPA, just the same as any other contract, I guess, in the government. You know, we have many 3-year contracts, some of which are subject to price adjustment and some of which are not. And the advice we got from our actuary is that if we were to enter into a 3-year contract, because the TPA has a certainty of being able to provide that service, you know, they have to mobilize resources to do that, a certainty of providing that service for 3 years, they would submit a bid that was more favorable than if they had to do single years and not know whether they were going to get that contract in the ensuing year.
Okay. You know, again, I recognize and I can appreciate that for possibly, and the way Mr. Carlson had said yesterday, we don't know what any savings or efficiencies can be created unless we try it. Okay? And I recognize this. But from the standpoint of that we have over here, you know, one of the things that I want to be able to look at is what's been our history. You know, in as far as the implementation, the maintenance, and you know, how the plan was working. And I found one of the things I was looking for that I rely on a lot is an audit. Obviously, these are funds that are, you know, collected from not just your employees, but also the retirees, if I'm not mistaken, right? But, you know, while the law requires for an audit, I have not found an audit. Can you answer why? I have not found it.
Well, I believe there is an audit. If you turn to page, I guess it's page 1 of the fiscal 24 audit, on the advice of our auditors, the fund, which was up to fiscal 24 part of the general fund, because it became so big, their recommendation was, and indeed that I was actually joining their recommendation, that the fund be taken out, and in the audit it's shown as a proprietary fund, and all the numbers for that fund are set out in the audit. The audit report says, we have audited the financial statements of the governmental activities, which is basically the general fund, the business type activities, which is the self-insured fund, and the aggregate discretely presented component units. And then it goes on to say, in our opinion, based on our audit and the reports of other auditors, and the other auditors are generally the pension fund, the accompanying financial statements referred to above, which is what I just read, present fairly, in all material respects, the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component units.
How many business type activities do we have in our fund?
1.
Just
that fund.
Just
yeah.
that.
Yes.
I'm very familiar with the report that you're reading, and I'm also very familiar that was in 2024.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, for all intents and purposes, that was 3 years ago. Okay. Where the law still requires an annual report, and just to see the kind of activity and see the kind of, because I'd like to know basically, all right, how much have we collected? How much have we spent? What are our claims? You know, are we going to be able to handle this? I don't want us to get into a situation where out of the blue now, we got that we're short to be able to pay claims, such as workers' comp. Okay?
Yeah, that's separate. Please.
Yeah, that's separate. But again, you know, there's history that, all right, then, or let's say childcare, okay? Where then it pops up and then we're going to have to find ways and to be able to fund it. And in this case, this is truly a matter of life and death. Okay, and see whether or not, you know, these funds are you know, we're taking care of these funds properly, or we're managing these funds properly. And what has been the history of the third-party administrator? You know, you know, for an activity such as that, and I have very little information to be able to ascertain, to be able to see, okay, maybe there is a need to be able to look at other options, but I don't know how it's working right now to be able to make that decision. So maybe this is something that, first off, it's got no effect or bearing on the current system, right? So if even if this were to pass, it will not affect the program or the system, program as it exists for the next fiscal year. There's no urgency in this.
No, it will become urgent round about next February, March.
Sure, but there's no urgency to be able to deal with it, to address this right now.
That's
without having the information provided by all involved, all parties involved, all stakeholders involved, to see how we can, how this can work out, right?
Yes, and you know, we've committed to the audit subject to these external issues by the end of November.
Okay, you're lucky because my time just went out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's probably a better standalone policy. Senator Gumitato, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for this briefing paper this morning. Let me just, as Public Safety Chair, let me just follow up on DOC real quickly. DOC's FY24 total budget was exceeded by about $428,000, even as its recruit cycle appropriation went substantially unspent in the same year. What specifically drove DOC over its overall budget, and is that same cost pressure expected to recur for the balance of this fiscal year going into FY 2027?
You're talking about FY25?
In FY 24, this is from the audit.
Okay, well, just my recollection, DOC has traditionally incurred very high water expenses. There are always leaks that go unnoticed for long periods of time. I have to work with my staff to be able to transfer monies into water on an annual basis numerous times. They're also one of the agencies that tend to fall behind in submitting their bills to DOA for prompt payment. And when we do get the bills, that's when we're aware of the consumption. That plus an inordinate amount of overtime because of their staffing shortages. Those drive their operational costs up every year. And quite frankly, the attrition rate at DOC is by far the highest that we have in public safety. And I think we can all understand why. But those are the primary drivers from my perspective.
So do you believe that that same cost pressure, it's going to continue well beyond not just this fiscal year, but going into next fiscal year?
Probably, sir, because all we're doing is fixing leaks as they arise, and I've discussed this as it applied to DOC and also to the Veterans Cemetery with Miguel Berdalio from GWA. The lines are old, and you basically have a leak that's fixed, and then you fix the leak, and basically it just causes a break further down the line, because unless you start changing out main lines, from the the road all the way in. You'll address the leaks for a while on the main line, but then you've got the supply lines to the different parts of the buildings that if you don't change those, they're just going to break again.
Understood. Because DOC reported through its FY 2026 budget request a total of $7,042,950.96 in prior year obligations, which were all for medical expenses, how was the department able to settle a multi-million-dollar debt, recognizing DOC did not identify any prior year obligations in its FY 2027 budget request? And for the record, how much is DOC tracking in unpaid obligations for FY 26, if you can share that with us this morning?
With respect to these medical obligations, these prior year bills, it was a big issue. The majority of those bills were payable to GMH, but there were outside providers who were owed significant sums of money. But we actually got through a lot of those in fiscal 25. We have a plan, right, and we're still trying to formalize this to, I guess, mash together the GMH contract that they already have at DOC and put the inmates into the self-funded plan, but there are certain differences that we have to recognize, that when an inmate is able to or needs to be an inpatient, Medicaid can pay for that. The problem was, in the past, Medicaid wasn't processed for that. So now we're alerted to, to that. Everybody knows that that has to happen. And by putting them into the overall plan, we get the discounts that are available from providers to all the other patients, that they're also available to the inmates. The issue was we have a large number of inmates and the number varies, and keeping track of that was a little bit challenging, but DOC is beginning to get their hands on that, and I appreciate that and applaud them for that.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Byrne. And maybe I'll stick with you for this next round of questions, but the FY24 audit shows an unassigned general fund balance of $40.5 million. You told this legislature during your budget hearing back in May that the Government Finance Officers Association's own benchmark for an appropriate reserve is about 2 months of revenues and expenditures. By your own figures, it's close to around 200 million. We're at roughly a fifth of that. What is DOA's plan to rebuild the unassigned fund balance toward the level that you yourself have identified as appropriate, and does anything in Bill number 110S move us toward that target or away from it?
Well, the most important thing that DOA wants to do is to sit in front of you senators and make it clear, that in order to build up that balance, you have not to spend all the available funds, revenues that are made available to you, because the only way that balance increases is revenues exceeding expenditures. So that's our goal. We have, I think, succeeded in stopping expenditures to the point where that unassigned balance becomes a deficit. Now we have to build on that. Offsetting that, though, we do have a rainy day fund, which certainly helps. The rainy day fund is actually part of the general fund, but it shows as committed, not unassigned. But that, for us to get to there from where we were, to have a rainy day fund that's getting towards its upper limit is also a good achievement.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Now, GovGuam's own FY24 financial statements describe the practice of appropriating funds without matching revenue adjustments as something not adopted by the federal or other state governments and not considered prudent financial practice. And note that this happened in FY 2024, FY 2025, and now in FY 2026, and no slight to the committee. Does DOA agree with its own financial statements on this point? And if so, what is being done differently for FY 2027 or the outlook for FY 2027 to avoid a fourth consecutive year of this practice?
Well, the comment that was made is, the goal is to have a balanced budget. Now, as I just said, a balanced budget doesn't increase or decrease the fund balance. It would just leave it unaltered for the particular year. The practice that we have adopted lately is, I think, and thank you all for doing this, is to have adopted more precise language in the appropriations that appropriates revenues, not kind of ethereal balances, right? We don't know what the balance is. Appropriating a balance that you don't know, and in particular, appropriating prior year appropriations, or allowing agencies to spend prior year appropriations, just eats up that balance because you've only got the cash once. So all those practices have contributed to this discipline, and thank you for helping to do that.
And thank you for that acknowledgement, Mr. Byrne. Let me just move my attention to our self-insurance. DOA has confirmed on the record twice that GovGuam cannot directly access the secondary reinsurance market and is not positioned to form a captive. This bill that we're debating changes the health insurance procurement law. Why does it not also address reinsurance, given DOA itself has identified this as an unresolved gap?
Well, we're trying to address it. We are actively investigating, setting up a captive. I don't think we said that we couldn't do it. We said we haven't done it, but we are trying to do that now. I spoke with the regulators in one jurisdiction and said, is it permissible in your jurisdiction to have a government entity set up a captive in order to achieve what we're doing? And I got an affirmative answer. So I now have a member of staff actively looking into this.
Okay, so looking at the budget, why 3 years? What is the main reason DOA wants the ability to enter into a health insurance contract for up to 3 years? You told us back in May that your advisors say that a 3-year contract will allow better pricing. So has DOA obtained an actual comparable quote from your current TPA or any prospective bidder comparing 1 year versus 3-year pricing, or is the general market advice not yet tested against an actual government of Guam bid?
No, we haven't tested the bid because it's difficult enough to do what we do in order to get these bids through. But that is the advice of our actuaries who have done this in other markets. Thank
you. Mr. Chair, as you're aware, this bill raises the threshold for mandatory Attorney General involvement in procurements from $500,000 to $5 million. For the administration, why the $5 million mark? And I know you may have alluded to it a bit yesterday, but I just wanted to get it back on the record. What problem are we trying to solve by removing the Attorney General AG's involvement from these particular procurements?
Primarily a backlog of contracts that, we go through the motions, we encumber the funds for a service, we do the RFP, we negotiate the contract is drafted, it's signed off by everybody, then it goes to the Attorney General's office and it gets stuck. And so we can't move forward. So I like to say this a lot because I think it's actually very appropriate. In the spirit of good governance, if we can identify log jams and come up with solutions to be more efficient, I think that's what we're trying to do here, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now,
Sorry,
oh, please, go ahead.
Could I add, when that limit was set in 2010, the purpose behind the whole process was to limit the number of protests. I think that's been achieved. We don't have that many protests at the moment. And we've got a lot of experience. We've had 16 years worth of experience of how to form a contract that isn't protestable. So I think those also argue to raising the limit because the effort has already been made and doesn't need to be made again.
Right, and I recall that back in 2010 in the executive branch when I was there. But just to kind of continue on this, is you told us in May that the Section 5150 should have a time limit and should be narrowed to confirming form and legality only, not eliminated. Does raising the threshold to $5 million actually do that? Does it narrow the scope and add a time limit, or does it just remove AG review entirely from a much larger share of procurements instead of fixing the problems that you described back to us back in May?
No, it doesn't address a time limit. We would actually encourage a time limit because, GSA, I can tell you, gets many inquiries from vendors who don't know where their bids are. And it's outside the control of, whether it's GSA or another procuring entity. It's outside the control of that entity. And that's not a good way to handle vendors. And it's certainly not a good way to get economical bids.
Thank you. At the same time, we're reducing the AG's involvement in this bill. The bill allows, again, you all to have a procurement council. If these procurements don't need AG review, then why does DOA need its own attorney to handle them?
Well, there's a whole lot of contracts that fall below that limit, and even the ones above that limit. The way the process at the Attorney General works now is that it's a kind of submission and response activity. So if the submissions to the AG have already had legal review, then in theory, the response should be much quicker. But that's not happening at the moment. The current Attorney General took the decision, and it's his decision, not to delegate that authority to attorneys throughout the agencies. So that has also contributed to the logjam.
Thank you. I want to go back just a bit if I can, to the healthcare plan. The retiree healthcare premiums, they came in nearly double the FY 2024 budget amount. Back, I think the audit said $34.5 million in an overrun. Do you expect that to recur? And if so, has it been fully reflected in the 27 budget request?
Yes, in the 27, but the reason, a lot of the reason for that was that the numbers previously budgeted didn't include the DC retirees, who are entitled to the health care just as much as any other retiree. We've addressed that in the fiscal 27 budget.
All right, thank you. Just only have a few more questions, Mr. Chair. Let's talk about the GFMIS. Is the GFMIS a complete, fully operational system today, or is it still a work in progress with procurement, grants management, tax receipts, and HR modules not yet fully live?
Well, the grants module became live at the beginning of August. It is a fully functioning system. That's not to say that we shouldn't have enhancements, and we certainly will. And there are parts of the procurement system that need some enhancements in order to, it's really to help agencies do their market research a little bit more effectively and paperlessly using the system. But the system works. The fiscal 25 audit that we're currently working on is wholly from the new system, and there's been a really appreciable increase in efficiency as a result of that. But we're not going to stop improving the system. We're going to do, if we see an issue, and I think you may have heard that we're working on the HR part, and in particular upon the evaluations, and that's still in progress. But I think we're within, I would say, 6 weeks we'll have finished that. And in September, we plan to introduce the new the ILA Pay, the new receipt system, which is also an enhancement on what we have now.
All right, thank you for the update, Mr. Byrne. And Mr. Chair, when I think about the questions that I asked this morning, whether it was across the GFMIS, the DOC budget execution, the retiree health care costs, our reserve levels, when we think about the numbers that were being presented and how we move forward, I know that we're still got a long way to go in terms of how we take care of the government's funds. And I just wanted to say that as we move forward in getting basics right, as a freshman senator, I want to understand it a little bit more, and I do appreciate all the work that has been done today by your committee and by the panel to better understand how we do this process. And again, I just wanted to ask that, and just to get the basics first, I think it's important for all of us, even in 2026. I think it's important today. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time, and thank you again, panel.
You're welcome, Senator Gumtauto. Senator Burnett, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, Manana Sidus to the people of Guam. Thank you for following along on our YouTube channel, and good morning again to the panel. It's so good to have you here. Not really much on questions, but I just did want to offer some commentary just based on yesterday's proceedings. And I find it a little bit ironic that some of my colleagues in the majority are now worried about the status of the reserves and whether there's going to be adequate funding moving forward. When we find ourselves asking questions like, do we have to give DOC $5 million for a new prison? When we find ourselves asking questions like, do we really need to fund fully the police cycles, the customs cycles, the corrections officers' cycles? I don't think those are the right questions. I think the real question is, why are we asking those questions? And again, we're asking those questions because of the reduction in the business privilege tax. And I can't express enough my disappointment in this special session bill that's come down from the governor. As again, it appears there's been a giant policy shift after spending the last 2 fiscal years arguing against the business privilege tax rollback. It appears the governor has either caved or cut a deal. And I think both are unacceptable to the people of Guam. You know, as we discussed the balance of the excess revenues and the impact of the delay of the property tax, we closed yesterday's proceedings. And it was kind of funny because every time we asked how much balance would be in the excess revenues, we kind of got a different answer. I asked once, and the answer was 20, then you said 22 million, and then Senator Taitigui, I think, rightfully pointed out that when we factor in things that we've funded with the delayed property tax, that we could be looking at an excess revenue balance of just $4 million when all of this is said and done. Because what's happening is the governor has raised the corporate withholding level. She's caved on the BPT, and the budget has a 4% BPT. And so she's funded a lot of the things that we were raising in the previous budget sessions, you know, the autism programs, the mobile suicide response team, the different shortfalls with public health. But again, I have to go back to these funding levels. We're not considering that many of these programs, to include the autism programs and a lot of these social services from public health, these are programs that, according to the directors and the agencies, are probably in need of expansion. These are programs where we have a wait list. So these funding levels are by no means improving the services, improving access to services. All of this is just dressed up as another status quo budget bill. And again, I don't think the people of Guam want status quo. They want improvements. And so it's very disappointing that this is how the governor is ending her legacy. Ending her legacy with this bill that she sent down that not only shortchanges, again, essential services by funding them at a status quo level, by caving on the 4% BPT. And so all of these things that we're funding with the excess revenues, we're going to have to fund them again next year with the excess revenues. And because we took $40 million off the top for the BPT rollback in the last fiscal year and another $40 million this fiscal year, that's $80 million up in smoke, disappeared into thin air. Those are critical government revenues that we could use to improve services for the people of Guam, not to remain in the status quo. These are critical government revenues that I'm sure my colleagues would love to use to make transformational changes for the people of Guam. Not to, this bill, we're barely getting by. We're barely meeting the obligations. Because again, the priority was to give the biggest of the big businesses the BPT rollback. And so I'm not sure how this is sustainable moving forward. It's not sustainable moving forward. It's not. And I don't care how big the Chamber of Commerce is making you guys' dogging. This BPT rollback, we're already seeing the impact to services. Take a look around you. Trickle-down economics. It's more like a drip, 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 because we're not seeing the trickle-down economics. And the big businesses were very clear when you guys rammed this BPT rollback through. They were honest. They said it's not going to lead to higher wages for our people, and they said it's not going to lead to lower costs at the cash register. That's absolutely true. The people of Guam have seen little to no relief from this business privilege tax rollback, and now we want to continue with the other 0.5% in cahoots with the governor to give it just for the sake of giving it. You didn't come up with a strategic plan how these agencies are going to deal with the reduced revenues, the reduced $80 million in revenues. And the chamber continues to bang the gong. And they continue to be honest about what a 4% BPT means. The revised budget should also preserve the return to a 4% BPT. A lower BPT can ease pressure on operating costs, help businesses retain employees, support investment, and improve Guam's competitiveness. Nothing about lower costs for our working families, nothing about higher wages for our working families. And it's only going to get worse should we proceed with rolling back the BPT to 4%. So I don't know what deal was made here. Maybe the deal was hands off the hospital in Manilao. Because now it looks like the majority wants to rush through this bill. They don't want to look at it chapter by chapter. And you have to wonder why. Well, we know why, because they're getting the 4% BPT. But at what cost? I think the cost is very clear. The cost is we're not going to help our grassroots families pay for the cost of living. This 4% BPT does nothing to make owning a home affordable or realistic for our working families. It's like a bonsai mission. It's like a bonsai mission because surely the cost of proceeding and wiping these revenues off the table and status quoing and underfunding programs and services for the people of Guam, it's going to cost some seats in this house. So let's not get too comfortable in our chairs. Because I think the people of Guam spoke very clearly in the primary election, and in case some of us didn't get the message in here, I'm pretty sure they're going to say it again, louder for those in the back. Now, with so little revenues left on the table, what does it mean? It means we can't assist our people with different programs. We can't provide power credits. Not just this fiscal year, but even next fiscal year. You know, all the experts say in their wisdom that we're heading towards a cliff. And so these revenues that we're seeing from the military buildup, these excess revenues in the $100 the millions of dollars, those are going to fade. But this body is proceeding with the pedal to the metal to give a full 1% BPT just for the sake of giving it. And I'm worried that we're going to speed right off that cliff in a couple years. And we will have little to no cushion for our people, little to no revenues to provide assistance to the ones who really need it. The big businesses already got a 0.5% BPT. It's reasonable, and everyone I talk to out in the community, the voters, think that that's the compromise, the 0.5%. So I just wanted to put my thoughts on that. Again, it's very disappointing that this is the governor's legacy, a lame duck power grab of GDOE finances. I mean, the only entity that has worse audit findings than GDOE is the executive branch. A lame duck attempt to circumvent legal reviews. I mean, by increasing tenfold the threshold that requires AG review. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to provide these comments on the record.
Sure, you can respond, Mr. Carlson.
The decision by the governor was not taken lightly. I will remind everybody here that this is the policy-making branch of the government of Guam. If you're unable to get consensus from your colleagues to be able to take a position,
Mr. Carlson, just respectfully, I didn't ask a question. I know, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond, but
I asked for the floor.
I anticipated.
I asked for the floor.
I anticipated
you know what?
that you would say this.
You are the policymaker.
I understand.
If you can't get consensus, then don't be singing to me.
Mr.
You should be singing to yourself.
Mr. Carlson, the bill passed 8-7. If
you were so
any
close.
governor would look at that and maybe think that, okay, maybe there's a chance we can pass something with the 4.5%. But yeah, I didn't ask a question, Mr. Chair, so appreciate the time again.
Sure. I gave him an opportunity to respond. Senator Chulai, you recognize.
Thank you. When we were talking about the last budget bill, we talked about the retention pay for police officers. Does this bill include adequate funds to fund the retention pay?
Senator, we believe it is factored into their overall budget. We recall that it was like a 2-year pilot program to see whether or not it worked, but I don't know how many we actually paid out, but I think the retention period and then the bonus, for lack of a better word, I think we're coming up to that point where people are actually hitting the mark. But I believe that the budget is sufficient.
All right, so yeah, that was my next question. Has anyone been paid?
Yes.
Okay. And so they're to be paid on, okay, that's fine. And then the last increase for law enforcement was by executive order in 2022. And you had told us in one of the public hearings that you were reviewing teacher salaries at law enforcement again. What is the status of the study for the teacher pay?
We're just finishing up the law enforcement, and then we will move on to teachers.
So you did law enforcement first. So you're finishing up. What does that mean?
I have a draft of which I've commented and sent back to staff.
All right, and is that, would these budgets that we have in this bill be able to cover any increase in salaries for the law enforcement as recommended by your study?
For law enforcement, we believe yes. We haven't done the teachers yet, so
in
we
the
don't
existing
know.
budgets?
Yes.
Or the proposal today? Today's proposal?
Yes.
Okay. And last time we talked about the last budget bill, we talked about DICID, the Division of Voc Rehab, wanted to open a southern daycare, but I don't see that on your list of things that was addressed by this new bill. Is that one of the things that is also included? Are we going to be able to open that southern daycare?
I don't believe that was specifically included. I think we're going off of the shortfall that they had, but that new program, I think, would remain unfunded.
Yeah, so it looks like you just brought it up to the operations, kind of
Yes,
status quo operations, so none of their new plans are going to be funded. They said they had 141 current people in there and that they needed expansion. 250,000 for that adult day care for the southern villages. All right, and then just going to make sure about COLA, we heard from OFB last time that according to retirement fund, they said the amount is sufficient, but now you've had more time to confirm. Is this amount going to be sufficient for the COLA? I'm asking you, BBMR.
When Mr. Guerrero was talking about a more recent conversation with GGRF, and he got updated information, I would agree with Mr. Guerrero.
All right, so you didn't double check that?
No, I did not.
Okay, and then the residential treatment fund, is that restored? Because it doesn't look like according to your list.
Yeah, we appreciate the consideration for the increase, but we also believe that the funding level will probably be insufficient.
Okay, so that was a $700,000, looks like. What happens to those people?
We just accumulate, costs that we're going to probably have to, at some point in time, either include in the prior year obligation cost or come back before the body for an adjustment.
All right. That sounds troubling. Can I just ask you one question here? This is one request I received yesterday from a Guam retiree covered under the Medicare RSP. Says they are billed quarterly $608.70 from off-island Medicare and pay the full amount. Reimbursement from retirement office are done monthly or later, awaiting for funding. Is there some delay?
I just signed off on the GDRF August request this morning.
All right. And I know you had said in your message and in yesterday's conversation that this is going to bring us up to the maximum Medicaid match, right? We're going to get our maximum amount available to Guam?
Yes.
All right, that's great. Is there any program that we're not matching to our maximum ability that you're aware of in this budget?
I think we did a pretty good job of providing the local match required, ma'am.
Okay. And you had said last time that DPW was short of would be short 10 million, and that we were only giving them status quo, and you were suggesting we give 10 million more for village streets and roads. Is this included in this budget or not?
No, it's not included in the budget, ma'am.
So we're just status quo on DPW road repair, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's also troubling. Okay. All right, so the appropriation made for JIBWIC in this bill, behavioral health, includes the autism program and current operations. Does it cover what they said they were concerned about last time, which is the 988 lifeline and the mobile crisis response?
Yes.
All of those, thank you. All right, and then in the last, I have it in my notes, where someone said that there's $33 million deposited for self-insurance backup. Where is that? Is that deposit money for the self-insurance?
It has its own bank account. So we receive premiums from individuals and agencies, and out of that, which is the question earlier from the speaker, we pay out the claims. But it sits in the bank account.
All right, so the amount that's been deposited there was sufficient to cover everything last year? I mean, this current year, sorry.
Well, it's still rolling, but
yes,
we have never had a deficit in that fund.
All right, so you haven't had to supplement that with other funds?
No.
And you expect the same this year, going forward, FY27?
Yes, and that, the actuaries advise us on the rate, and the rate is set to do exactly that. So
are the rates being increased this year for the consumers?
I think it was attached to that, but in most cases, no. I think there are some increases for subscribers to the high deductible plan, because that did have each plan was looked at by the actuary to determine the financial viability of each. And I think that was the only one that was going to get an increase.
All right. Back to the law enforcement study, the pay study that you did. You said it's pretty much final. You're making a recommendation. What happens next to that? It goes to the governor?
It goes to the governor, and the governor either approves or disapproves it, yes.
And if she wants to implement it, she does an executive order, like the last time?
Yes, although I think we think it's sufficient for her just to sign off on the recommendation.
All right, and how long will it take you to complete the teacher pay study?
Generally, these take like a couple of months to finish.
So that would be like beginning of the fiscal year, September, October?
Well, we're here September, October, yes. Yeah.
Would DOE be able to cover that with its current funding?
For the reasons we've been talking about, I don't know. We would advise DOE of the amount, certainly. That certainly is an issue, right? But it may or may not be, because I also read that they had like 150 plus unfilled positions.
That's right. All right.
Yes. Ma'am. Yeah, my staff just sent me a message that the Southern Adult Daycare for this is funded with the amount.
Okay, that's great. All the provisions in this bill that would require a GDOE to be under the state clearinghouse of the lieutenant governor or the governor, it does give an extra view, but does that require action by the state clearinghouse versus GDOE? Does it impede any of GDOE's current authority to act, to receive, to agree, to enter into agreements? Because it seems like it does.
Not really an expert on the operations of the State Clearinghouse, but their activity is to maximize grants, not impede grants. So I'm sure whatever they do will contribute to the effort. And we do know from the Fiscal 24 audit that DOE had some challenges with their grants.
Yes, as did the government of Guam, right? So.
Well, no, but it didn't have any trouble knowing what the grants were, and that seemed to be an issue with DOE, especially on those school repair grants.
Well, I'm very uncomfortable with doing this for GDOE or changing their process in the middle right now without their input, without a public hearing that totally, lets us hear all sides of this, and especially what the impacts might be on their actual, management of those grants. Same thing with changing the AG's authority or their limit on reviewing procurement up to $5 million. That's a huge increase, or a lot of more contracts that will not receive AG review. And yeah, so those are my concerns.
Senator, could I just point out that the AG signs contracts. It's just the 5150 review that would be increased.
Right, the one that says whether you've actually complied with the procurement law or not, and yes. Otherwise his signatures just has to form on a contract, which is not very meaningful if we don't know whether the procurement has been reviewed. I just feel like with the things that we've been going through with procurement, that that AG review is still beneficial. I know you have a big dispute, but I just think if you think of it in the big picture and take out all the personalities, that having an AG say this procurement followed the procurement law, that's something we really want in our government, and we put that in. I know previous legislatures put that in for a reason, because in the end we were ending up with disputes, or and pretty much all the disputes alleged that we have not followed the procurement law. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And so I would advocate that those provisions regarding the self-insurance contract and the AG and the GDOE, that all of those be put onto a separate bill, and that they be just dealt with in the next few months on their own, so that we can have public hearings on that and really hear from all sides. So other than that, Mr. Chair, no further questions, but thank you all.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, I just want to reiterate the comments from some of my colleagues here. I have concerns about this additional funding from what is unobligated funds. We passed the Public Law 30-60, which appropriated, was it 20 million to GMH, and only to hear that that was not provided. And we're only going to, with this language here in this bill, it's going to be then allocated to them. So the concern is whether they already went through some contracts and certified based on that appropriation. I mean, this is a concern because this is not a question, by the way, but I just want to say that I have reservations about this bill, because should it be passed, we are overspending what is currently being tracked. The other question that I have is that what we are tracking, is it truly accurate? Because what appears on collections may not be what we obtain in cash. There is this process at DRT where on the books it looks like collections, but when it comes time for cash, the collections is decreased because of abatements or compromise, right? So compromises are given to taxpayers. So this is a concern when we're trying to raise the revenues of corporate income tax specifically. And the information provided by DRT, we are already at a uncollectible amount of about 20 million to date. So in addition to the findings by the public auditor in regards to the insurance, so there are some liabilities, so basically claims that were incurred in a fiscal year, but liabilities that still remain because they were not recorded, or I forget it, the acronym is, there were several acronyms here. INBR, right, is one acronym, where they're unpaid claims, so they basically are liabilities. And so we don't know the full extent of these liabilities. I don't believe there has been a report on this. And here we are appropriating with this bill the full extent of what we know to date regarding what is considered excess, unobligated funds. And so what do we have left should these liabilities be called upon? And of course, the hospital, you know, they came in here good faith, providing testimony, stating these were their needs in regards to capital improvement projects, paying off vendors. And so we passed that budget, or that budget bill was passed to address that. To date, they have new needs. They have a new budget for 2027. So we can't ignore what was passed before to meet those needs in the past, or expect to be able to meet those needs with just one particular appropriation. And so my concern is that if this bill is passed as is, we are going to be overspending what is being collected. The other issue with this bill is many of the add-ons really require a public hearing. We don't have the public auditor here. We don't have the stakeholders who are going to be affected, and we don't have the public seeing the impacts, or at least being able to provide testimony. So those are some of the issues that I have. In regards to retention pay for police officers, it was stated at a budget hearing that it would not take effect until the next fiscal year, and here we are hearing that it has been given out. And so the question is, who has it been given out to? What is the waiting list? So these are questions that I feel need to be answered. Unfortunately, you know, if you can provide a statement, I have to, you know, I can't stay for this, but I appreciate any responses by email or to the body. So, Mr. Chair, I leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to echo some of the sentiments of the retiring speaker from EPAN about the concerns the majority have for a reserve and the reservoir. Because this is exactly what we are dipping into to pay for these tax cuts for the very, very, very wealthy. And I see what the governor is doing. The governor's on her way out. She's a lame duck. She's in her lame duck period. This happens with all governors in their time. They don't have the same ability to get things done in the legislature. And I commend her for doing what she's done to preserve the long-term health of the government's finances. However, now in her final term, this new Republican majority wants to take that healthy financial picture and turn around and give a permanent tax cut of $80 million a year to the wealthiest of the wealthiest businesses. And not because it makes good financial sense. Never once in all of this discussion has there ever been a plan, a vision for how this reduction in government revenue leads to Guam's greatness. No, it was done because it was a promise. Come hell or high water, we are going to get you more money. And that's not good governance. We are hurting not just the island now, but we are hurting future legislatures' ability to solve the problems. This is basically a status quo budget. All the reserve funds we once had from having a higher BPT rate are being basically sucked out by tax cuts. The governor is over here with this bill saying, look, fine, I'll give you your 4%. But in exchange, you give me my programs this year and you can all deal with the problems after it. That's what I see when I look at this budget. She's washing her hands of the future problems we are making. When we have a future disaster that we cannot rise to meet the occasion of, some members of this body who could be governor would only have themselves to blame because they were there when they cut their own budgets in the future, reduced their own revenues. Did any of you run on let's make the status quo great again? No. This bill is status quo, but it's worse because it's status quo with a massive, massive tax cut for the biggest of the biggest businesses. If you're somebody raking in hundreds of millions of dollars, telling me we can't do 5,000 per million? I talk to people all the time. They don't think that's unreasonable. What's unreasonable is this: come hell or high water, we are going to get money to the Chamber of Commerce because we promised the Chamber of Commerce. Forget changing economic situations. Forget the fact that we're in the middle of World War III over there and it's affecting us over here in our daily cost of price of food, in our inability to get childcare locally because federal dollars are being siphoned up by another Republican war in the Middle East, directly affecting Guam. And we want to go full steam ahead in reducing revenues to the island. We are in the middle of a massive military buildup, and we are not thinking about potentially tapping that core of businesses that aren't from Guam more. And so, no, I agree with my colleagues that see that there is a lack of a reservoir, of reserve for what goes on to the future. And if we run into those problems, that is a problem that we sowed, that this body sowed. And that's why I cannot vote for any bill that has a 4% BPT. I asked the governor to please take back your support for this bill. The vote here was 8-7. If we all stick together, we can negotiate and compromise on keeping a 4.5% BPT. We do not have to go down to 4%. I understand where the governor is coming from. She's been nothing but sandbagged by this chamber for her entire 8 years. So she's throwing her hands up and saying, fine, just get me what I need for this year, and you guys could go ruin the future together. But I'm not giving up on the future. I'm building my future right here on Guam. And if I want the problems on this island that we all see are happening, then we need revenues to do that. We already have the federal government saying that we can't take care of the child care because we gotta pay for the wars. And as this war continues to go on, that's going to be said about other things. You guys are going to have to take care of your Medicare and Medicaid and your FEMA and all these other things that we once relied upon the federal government to provide for us. And if the federal government is at threat of not providing those things, we need to build some resiliency into our budgets. I had my criticisms of these very conservative budgets we had once upon a time, but I always appreciated that we had the flexibility to move when circumstances dictated it. When we needed to give funding to the farmers for crop loss insurance, we can do it. When we needed to buoy people's energy prices with power credits, we can do it. When we needed to give $25 million for typhoon relief before the typhoon hit, we could do it. But now we're putting ourselves in a position where we are cut to the bone. We are exactly, maybe a little bit more, but basically where we were in previous legislatures, a status quo budget. But instead of seeing something with that reserve, we're seeing a permanent tax giveaway. Look, if you want to make an investment in Guam's businesses, do a leap, give them $20, $40, $60, $80 million for 1 year to help stimulate businesses while our tourism economy is wrecked. Honestly, that is a plan I can get behind. What I cannot get behind is a permanent cutting off of our future revenue for these tax cuts. Support the businesses for 1 year. Support the people for 1 year, whatever. But do not hurt future legislatures. Do not hurt future governors. Do not hurt us in the future by being self-centered and short-sighted now. People are hurting out there, and this money doesn't go to address any of that. And the Chamber of Commerce has said that they are doing better than ever. And they have come out and said that this tax fall is not going to lead to lower prices or higher wages. When people tell you what they're going to do, believe them. So, with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Montanani, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly appreciate all of the comments and commentary from my colleagues. But I can tell you just from my experience here in the legislature, and most of my colleagues, that we're all doing the best we can with the resources and the finances that are available. And so I'm just going to ask one more time, how much in excess revenues, whether it is FY24, 25, and 26, is available?
Nothing in 24, nothing in 25, and what you have before you is for 26.
Which is 22? Was that 22?
Yes,
that
ma'am.
You said yesterday?
Yes.
But I believe my colleague yesterday, when she, was it?
Territorial Trust Fund
Right.
is yielding 17
And it was-
million negative.
So it's 4? Would you concur with that?
I'll ask Mr. Byrne to comment, ma'am, but again, when you pay your property taxes for this year, if it comes in November, it's going to be booked as a FY26 payment, and it'll be credited so. So there's going to be a lot of, accounting adjustments that are made to take into account the fact that somebody made a payment because the deadline was extended, and I believe it will be self-rectifying. So I don't believe we need to appropriate for it. And I'll let Mr. Byrne comment on that.
Well, if I could also backtrack to something Senator Perez said about collections, and recalling what I said yesterday, that there's a difference between collections and revenues. In the audited financial statements, we will report revenues, and as Mr. Carlson rightly said, that the receivable revenue is reported as the revenue in the year, but the CRER reports collections, and those are the collections at Treasurer of Guam. It's not anticipated collections. You know, we do a bank reconciliation, and that shows the actual cash that we've received.
Okay. I'll just move on. The EBR, it didn't include 21 million for GMH, which they were hoping to receive for FY 27, because they contend that they are short $21 million for their operations. We did try to push an amendment, or we introduced an amendment in the previous budget, but that didn't go anywhere. And now we have this substitute bill 1S, and there also is nothing regarding the additional funding that GMH maintains they need. Do you believe that GMH doesn't need this $21 million? Or they're good with what is in the budget?
No, I don't, ma'am. But, you know, one thing about budgeting is that you can never, ever meet all the full requests of everybody, and you just have to reconcile yourself with that. The hands are always out. The pie is only so big. You can only take what it is that the body feels is collectible. And again, at the beginning of the fiscal year, when the budget kicks in, we're hoping that the projections for revenue are achieved, but that's one full year. So we have to take it on good faith and you know, some of the past experiences to be able to give you a sense of security that whatever revenue you anticipate, we will receive. We've been in a position over the last 4 or 5 years where we've collected revenue in excess of what we've adopted, and that's good. And maybe, you know, if that continues, you can provide some additional assistance to GMH, but I just can't, I'm okay with what it is we're doing here, because everybody before you wants more money. Everybody came in before you guys with prior year obligations that you weren't able to address from an appropriation standpoint. So I would hope that all of the members of the body understand, you can never fully satisfy everybody. You just, like you said earlier, you're doing the best you can.
I'd like to follow up on the ARP. I believe in the last budget discussions, you had mentioned about the $10 million that might be reallocated to GMH. What is the status of that?
We still are preparing the liquidation from the source that was currently funded, which is the new hospital site. So we're taking $10 million away from there, and we're going to be making it available to GMH in the very near future. So we're still good for that.
Still good. And what about all the other reallocations? Can you kind of break that down once more?
The reallocations from the hospital account?
Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned DPW was going to be...
Yeah, so we gave like $21 million to DPW for Village Street paving.
That's already been reallocated. They've got the money. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. What else? Oh, well, and $40 million to GWA for additional water lines that will serve the Atacao area. We're hoping that GWA will take another $21 million, or no, $14 million. So it'll be like $54 million in total. So that plus the 21 for DPW and the 10 for the hospital. That's the bulk of it, the 104 million.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Bora, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to DOA and everybody who's come down here today for another round. Before I get into some of the questions, I think what I want to I guess it's a response to just a lot of the things that have gone on this morning. But to start off with the budget before us, Lester and Mr. Byrne, when you guys came during the original budget bill that we entertained and got vetoed, you came before us and in your opening you raised all the different things that you guys had concern of in regards to the substitute version of the bill that we brought. And granted, obviously, it got vetoed because the governor wasn't pleased, but then you brought down, the governor sent down this other bill. And was there any, I guess, are you guys, I'm assuming you're satisfied with what was sent down by the governor because you're here to defend that, obviously. What's a distinct difference on your position on what was brought down and sent down, or we substituted versus what the governor sent down?
Like I said, Senator Bora, the governor did not take lightly sending out this bill with a 4% BBT. But when we sat in her office, there were a number of us there, and the consensus was there's no political will for 4.5. I'll say it again, there's no political will for 4.5%. So with that realization, what we're going to do? Be Don Quixote, go out and fight windmills? Or are we going to just be realistic in what it is that we think we should be able to come down? And we took the time to be able to come up with a viable revenue enhancement to fund the areas in which we said we were short. So, let's be honest here. We solved the problem and we brought it down before you, and we tied it up in a nice little bow. And I think that is the epitome of compromise and statesmanship. I don't believe it's caving.
But all the issues that the governor had with the budget that we sent down in regards to programs, were those addressed in the bill that she sent down that we had before?
We believe that the $18 million takes care of the more critical areas that we talked about. The vulnerable members of our society are being addressed. So we think we did a pretty good job of coming in here and getting the best that we possibly thought was achievable.
And I have to ask this, could you confirm if any of the senators here made a deal with the governor in order for her to come to this compromise and say that on the record?
I don't talk to anybody. Nobody comes up to me and says anything. None of you guys, including this guy here.
I'm
serious.
I'm going to tell you, because I'm kind of in the middle of the pack. When all of the senators go before me, and I kind of know what I'm going to ask and say, by the time it gets to me, I'm trying to figure out, wait, where did I get left out?
No, sir. Just for the record, no, there was no deal, there was no colluding, there was none of that stuff. Honestly, Senator Borja, Mr. Byrne was there, Abigail was there, right? We sat with the governor and a few other members, senior staff, and we were just being realistic, Could we fight this? And, well, we don't have enough ganks on our side to win, so that's what it is.
And then my follow-up question is, because the substitute version that we entertained and passed, there was opposition to it on this floor. You guys sent down another bill, hopefully to address a lot of the things that were raised during that opposition, but there still seems to be opposition in regards to that. So I'm trying to figure out, just based on a lot of that, what are your recommendations on what we need to do to address the opposition? Or are you guys comfortable, or the governor comfortable with what is before us? Because I think I think for the most part, a lot of us here on, I like to say we're just the majority. We're the majority because there's 9 of us versus 6. But I think we're easy to work with. But what are some things that I mean, that we're asking. I mean, I guess you're right in saying we have to come to a consensus, and then whatever the majority decides, we move on and we make decisions based on that. Has anybody on the other side, at least who have issues with this bill, made any attempt over the last maybe week since the substitute version or the governor's version sent down, speak to the administration to try and maybe make some changes before, or suggest some changes that we can compromise on here?
I am not aware of any such discussions. And to go back to your question, again, we thought that if we kept all your amendments in, right, that there would be some realization of the work that you guys did to come and to debate certain provisions, mostly policy, right? And we tipped our hat to you guys, and you know, we included them. This list that we have before you are some items for discussion, again, policy related, that we're more than happy to discuss where our thinking was with them. And I think we've done a pretty good job of being able to lay out our thinking for your consideration and deliberation on the amendments. So, you know, Senator Borah, I thank you for having like what I like to call a beer drinker's approach to this, because it's very easy to follow your logic. You're taking some things that were, you know, said previously, and you're wanting a little bit more explanation, a little bit more clarity, and I appreciate the ability to give it to you. And you know, if we're going to sit here and, you know, go through a recreation of when I believe it was Senator Pangilinan and Governor Calvo, when they went through like 7 iterations of a budget bill. Do we really want to do that? Seriously, I mean, come on, man. Let's go. Let's be real and drink some beer. Come on.
You know, Mr. Chair, I have a couple more questions, but before I get into this, you know, because I think the one of the issues, obviously, or the opposition or the other side has contested, is that we're you know, hung on this BPT rollback. And to respond to one of the comments earlier by one of the retiring speakers, you know, most of us, I would say, at least in the majority, ran, and that was our commitment. I don't think it was a lie that the Republicans, most of the Republicans, ran on to roll back the BPT, and despite that, I think we've done a good job in putting more money into the hospital. We put more money into the Department of Education, considering they still have, you know, millions, you know, $61 million, I think, at this point sitting in their bank account. So, you know, to clear that comment up, because a lot of times, like when we sit in, we get accused of making deals. You know, I spend a little bit more time trying to figure out where those deals were made so that I could get into those conversations, not because I want to be part of the deal, but I think we can get more done when we you know, start talking, and I can appreciate that about even some on the other side who have crossed the aisle to come and work with us. And, you know, good job to the budget chair in at least coming to a compromise, because you're right, we're not always going to get what we want. You know, if you gave everybody what they want, when every agency came to ask, do you think that even with a 6 or a 7% that would be able to fund the entire government, just based on what everybody that has stuck their hand out asked for?
No, sir.
Would you happen to know what like that amount would be if we tried to fund at the ask of every government agency?
Couple $100 million more.
Okay, thank you. 2 more questions in regards to the GDOE accounting, central accounting clearinghouse amendment that's in there. Mr. Byrne, I asked already yesterday, and I'm sure you've heard that I shared that Dr. Wampat said she wasn't, she wasn't in support of doing this right now. And I don't think it's because she just doesn't want to do it. And even for us as policymakers, I think the issue is we're going to do something so drastic so fast without really having a deep conversation with the Department of Education on the implications of doing this. I also understand why we've had a meeting in regards to this possible policy being entertained a couple months ago, but I don't think we're quite there yet. If you want to just kind of, I know you shared it with my colleagues earlier, but just to shed a little bit more light on us, the purpose of this amendment and why you need it like in this bill today rather than maybe doing a roundtable initially with GDOE and maybe a phased-in approach.
Well, the process of getting there, I mean, I don't think I would agree with you that it's all sudden and happened. I mean, this has really been going round and round since sometime at the middle of last year when the auditors certainly came to me with concern about undue delays to the GDOE audit, and that actually went a little bit further to say that they were concerned about the individuals there that being asked to do more than they were trained to do or even had the qualifications to do. So we've actually tried to move it along since then, but you're right, it hasn't been the #1 issue until it becomes the #1 issue, and as I said earlier this morning, I still don't have the numbers. You just shocked me when you said there was 61 million sitting in their bank account. I mean, I'm sure we would all wish
it's the ARP reimbursement that they're still waiting on the feds to give them clarity on whether or not they can spend that. So, but yeah, that's a 61 million.
I mean, okay, but earlier there was a question about the state clearinghouse. I mean, what is it that's not clear, and could other people have the resources to make it clear? So as I said earlier, it's not my first choice to do this, right? DOA already has enough to do, but DOA has a responsibility to report numbers accurately and quickly, and this is a solution. If somebody has a slightly different solution, that would be great. But we're about to finish a financial year, and that was one of the reasons for putting it into this legislation, is that we have to start a new financial year, and if we're going to do that, we want to do it in the new way.
In deep discussions with GDOE over the last year in regards to just their spending and why there's a lot of delays, the big problem really with the Department of Education and the business office is the ability to recruit and retain. So because they follow the pay plan, I think that is down at DOA, how do you plan to address that? Because that's really their problem. Is there a special thing that DOA does differently in regards to recruiting the same talent that they need in order to spend the large amount of money that they have to spend annually?
DOA has the same positions with the same pay. DOA, though, does have the advantage of having a CFO, a specialized CFO and a specialized team. And so I don't really think there's a competition between the two agencies. They're paid the same, it's just that we have different positions, and I like to think superior expertise, because we are dealing with this bigger entity. I mean, if you pull apart DOE, like 90% of their expenditure is payroll. That doesn't seem to be too challenging, and unaccountably it does seem to be challenging. Right? I know there are some issues with federal grants, and as senators have commented, every agency has some issues with federal grants, but not to that extent. This is a high extent, 61 million. So I just feel it needs to be addressed. Senators can take a different view. This is a solution. It's kind of like, offering ourselves up in sacrifice. We're prepared to do that to get a good result.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The last question I have, or a couple questions around the building for GDOE at Teason. I saw that there was a change in so the line item B, which is essentially unchanged, and then which is the base rent of $266. Same in both bills, but in the new one, the GDOE office building line item E, it changed. The substitute bill was $2,294,866 base rent plus $546. $546,000 insurance and maintenance. In the new bill, it's $2.240253's base rent plus $600,739 insurance and maintenance. The total lease cost effectively identical, which is $2.840992 minus the $2.840993 either way. So it's not a funding increase or out. It's a $54,000 shift out of base rent and into insurance and maintenance for the same building. For the GDOE building office line item under the T's and lease appropriation, the substitute bill funded it as $2.294866 for base rent and $546,127 for insurance and maintenance. The bill changes it to $2.240253 and $600,739 for insurance and maintenance, a shift of $54,000 again out of base rent and into insurance. Why the total stays effectively the same? Why was that reallocation made?
Hi, Senator Borja. The reallocation bottom line is the same. It's still the $10 million overall, but we are just basing our numbers on the schedule that was provided to us by GITA in terms of the breakdown between the base rent and the insurance.
Okay. In regards to that lease, though, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news lately, there's been a lot of scrutiny in regards to the work and a lot of the issues that are there. How involved is the administration with Cortec and Department of Education in addressing a lot of the concerns? Because when I met with Cortec yesterday and the maintenance personnel, there's a lot of ambiguity in regards to what the Department of Education is responsible for in addressing a lot of the concerns there versus what Cortec is responsible for. Is there any involvement with the front office in regards to this lease?
No.
Aren't you guys because it's not GDOE that is the lease was executed.
The government of Guam is just paying for it. That's why you look at the location of that payment. It's not up in the front with our bond debt. It's in the back because we're renting it from them, and we've been renting since Governor Camacho was in office. So, it morphed into a school.
Do you know who
lease.
I've asked to see the contract, but do you know off the top of your head who is? So it's just the government of Guam. So anybody within the government of Guam?
No, it's the legislature, the government of Guam providing the facility and the funding for GDOE. So we don't have any involvement. And you should look at who's up there. Their central office is there.
But I think that's obviously that's the issue then, because even with speaking with them, they're not that they're washing their hands of it, but they're not even sure who's responsible for it, because even they're saying, well, we're not the ones who are in charge of this contract. This is something that was, like you said, I think Governor Calvo or
Governor Camacho.
Governor Camacho. So okay, that answers a lot. That explains a lot of the. I think the confusion there, because there really is there's no onus in regards to
there should be onus because DOE is the recipient of the goodwill of the government of Guam, and because you're the recipient, you should act the part. I can't see anybody throwing up their hands. There is a requirement. This is like back to the 4 schools, the GEFF schools, right? Just because there was a budgeted amount, that didn't preclude the landlords from coming before this body and saying, this amount was done ever since Governor Camacho had these schools built. And the amounts are dated and they're woefully insufficient. But nobody ever came to this body to ask for, a revision in the insurance and maintenance portion. And had they done that, maybe the schools wouldn't be in such condition.
Senator, I did have a conversation with the Deputy Superintendent along these, not specific to any one school, but along these lines. And I thought we'd reached an understanding of the demarcation that you were just referring to, but I understand there's still further confusion, and I will happily have another discussion with him. But as Mr. Carlson says, the duty of the governor's office is to pay the lease, and including whatever was agreed at the very beginning for maintenance and insurance.
Yeah, I appreciate that because really I think, like I shared with the contractor yesterday, we definitely need to come back to the table because based on at least our understanding of the contract and what they can or can't do and what they're obligated to do based on the contract, I mean, the school and the way it is it's not, it's unacceptable. I don't think we should continue to have our students and teachers be there. And at least with my discussions with them yesterday, based on the contract, it is what it is. It is what it is. And they'll work to address some of the issues, but there's some things in the contract that say they don't need to address the issues that GDOE is saying that need to address. And that's where this discussion came up on, well, then who needs to bring them back to the table to renegotiate or figure out how or amend the contract to address these issues, because we can't continue to allow the school, if we're going to keep those students there, then we have to change the contract because they're saying we're not going to change that because this is what the government agreed to when they first signed this contract 20 years ago. And that's why we are where we are. And so I appreciate the clarity, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
It's 12 years. That thing was signed in 2014. So, I mean, this body did a good job in being able to revise the amounts that were paid for JFK correctly. So there was an increase from 1.5 million a year to where it is now, about 2.2. And that reflects the cost of the increase in goods that are being supplied, and also the raise in the minimum wage. So none of that was taken into account for TGen. So you're absolutely correct. We do need to revisit that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lujan, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Burns, actually, this question was asked a few times as well regarding the annual audit of the self-insurance, and hadn't taken place at this point. My question is, basically, we're going in our 4th year of Guam self-insurance, right?
Yes. Not all the early years were fully, not all the elements were self-insured.
Yeah. And actually, this body was sold in the fact that the government of Guam will see a tremendous savings going through the self-insurance process here. I have not heard from the get-go the annual cost savings to the government of Guam has realized. To date, how much has Guam saved in this process of being self-insured? How many millions have we saved in this point?
Well, I think I went on record when we first introduced the fully insured, self-insured policy that we were expecting a saving of between 5 and 14% on medical claims costs. And I think over the years, we have actually achieved something around about 11% savings in our medical claims cost, compared with, and it's hard to compare it with because we don't have a fully insured cost to compare it with, but compared with what we believe would have been the insured costs. And that came from our actuaries too.
Okay, now on an annual basis, we see health premiums rates go up. On the employee side, we don't really see that. What is it like on the government side, and where is the government getting that money? Because I know healthcare has gone up. It has gone up. I mean, when we were self-insured, we saw premiums constantly going up.
Yes.
I don't think it leveled off. So if the employees are not paying for it, and the government side, I mean, is that leveled off as well? And where's the government getting the money for that boost?
Well, it has leveled off. Indeed, our local...
So health insurance has not gone up in 3 years?
Our local cost increase for medical costs are around about 4% a year. We had a rather tortured conversation when, on a separate thing that we were trying to do for the audit, the OPEB valuation of the future medical costs, where the auditor's actuary was saying it should be more like, it should be assumed that it should be more like 6 to 7%. But I pointed out to them that our actual increase locally here was much less than that and is something, it's just under 4%. Now, having said that, like I said yesterday, we're starting from a very high number because our claims are high, and that relates to the general health of people on Guam, which is generally less healthy than in the rest of, on the mainland and elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So although the increase has been contained, there is still a very high level of, we have a lot of people on dialysis, and as you know, a really high number on dialysis, and as you know, cardiac issues and stroke and diabetes are the three major problems, and they continue at a high level, but we have contained the increase in costs.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking this, Mr. Burns, is that, I mean, is this the best deal then that the government of Guam, self-insured, has gotten? And the reason why I'm asking this, because I've got oversight of quite a few autonomous agencies, okay? And they're wanting to pull away from the Gov Guam self-insurers. They want to, again, have their own autonomy to go out and get their own insurance. So if that's the best deal we're getting, why do they still want to find a better deal?
Well, there may be a number of hidden and unhidden reasons for that. But when confronted with that question by two of those agencies last year, right, I pointed out that, insurance is a shared risk. We, the government, share that risk with the exception of the judiciary, who choose to insure only their current employees. Their retirees are insured by the government. Right? Other than that, the risk is shared. The risk is shared by younger people who have to pay for the claims of older people. That's just the nature of insurance. And that would be the same whatever pool you were in, assuming the pool were big enough. I mean, we have the same pension plan for executive and autonomous agencies, and we have the same insurance plan. That's the law at the moment. They can certainly try to persuade you here to change the law, but if they were to do so, please let them take their own retirees.
No, absolutely, and that's what
that is one of the risks.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're trying to get to. I mean, it's just the best deal we can get, and if they're going to have complete autonomy, then take the whole thing, right? I mean, not just hey, right. I'll get the healthy ones, and you keep the higher risk folks, right?
But I think it is the best deal for everybody. And to answer your specific question about how the increases are shared, that's the governor's decision. The governor decided not to increase employee contributions. And again, I pointed out yesterday that the employees still have to pay a percentage of those costs, and that has gone up, right? But that's the governor's decision. Unfortunately, the government budgets, which the fringe benefits in the government's budget, has been sufficient to bear the costs. The only one that wasn't was the retirees, for reasons I explained earlier.
So basically you're saying from what was touted before, from maybe a 14% savings is more realistic figure is more of a 4% savings.
No, that was the 4% was the increase in medical costs year on year. I think the savings are nearer 11%.
11. So, okay. So that still holds true then from what was touted now going on 4 years, that the cost savings will be 11%. So, and so I think the audit will show as such.
But obviously cost increase, you recall that not this year, but last year, GMH put up their fees by a considerable amount. And they put up their fees because they had to, but all the insurers, including us, had to bear a share of that increase.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Tidiwin, ma'am, you have the floor.
Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Chair. If you give me 1 second, I didn't realize I was next. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me a little bit of time to get ready. I thought there was a colleague that was ahead of me. Again, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Oh, it's always nice to know you're not in front of lunch. We still got a little bit more time. So the question I do have, let's go to DOC. The questions that were asked, I've asked earlier, and then of course, thank you, Lester, for coming back and providing that explanation, especially in writing, so we can revert back to it to understand more and let it sink in. So, but I do have a question regarding the funding. So we know that during the DOC Modernization Act that was passed into Public Law 36-57, using EITC funding, I remember that particularly because I kept trying to tell the body that we can't appropriate this funding because it's not going to go directly into our account. It's going to be as a reimbursement, directly to the earned income tax credit, or actually upfront costs for the next not reimbursement, but it's actually the upfront costs for the earned income tax credit that the obligation the government of Guam has. So that being said, when this bill passed, it left it with no funding of $5 million to start off with. But in the bill itself, it says there shall, and then let me pull that bill up real quick. In this section on page, it was page 7, it clearly states that there shall be an appropriation thereafter for $5 million. There shall. So, Mr. Byrne, do you consider this a responsibility? It's on page 10. It says the sum of $5 million from the revenues received, okay, from the earned income tax, and then number 2 says the sum of no more than $5 million from the general fund shall be appropriated annually thereafter. So we know that in FY23, there was no money put aside for the hospital for $5 million as required by law. And then FY24, there was no money put aside to DOC that was required by law. And then in 2025, we did appropriate $5 million, but technically it was just 4 because we used $1 million of that. And then now we're at FY26. So, Mr. Byrne, do you consider this a liability for the government? Is it a debt? Because it is by law that we're required to appropriate $5 million every year thereafter, when the bill was first passed in 2021 of October.
Well, an appropriation isn't a debt, so I'm not really clear the distinction you're making.
Yeah, is it on the books that we owe? Because it does require us to appropriate, shall be appropriated annually thereafter. Is that considered an obligation of the government then?
I would have to look at the text that you're looking at, which I don't believe is in this bill, right?
It is in the bill on page 10, page 11 of the public law. You want to take a minute? Find it? I think Gita might have it. Public Law 36-57.
Well,
I don't believe it's. So it says it shall be appropriated, but
Let's take a 1-minute recess.
Okay. You know, an appropriation, I mean, first of all...
Okay, back from recess.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take that. So an appropriation is not a debt, right? An appropriation is an annual appropriation. So if it fails for one reason or other, it fails and it goes, you know, it has to be re-upped, I guess, in the second year. As far as the EITC is concerned, you know, that's a trust fund.
Yeah, no, I don't have any question on the earned income tax credit trust fund. I don't have anything on that one.
It isn't appropriate to appropriate anything out of the trust fund.
Understand. But, you know, it says here the sum of more than $5 million from the general fund shall be appropriated annually thereafter. You know, it requires the legislature to do that. So that's why I'm asking if it's an obligation or a requirement, so by law.
Well, I think the law is a little confused because an appropriation, it's an annual appropriation.
Well, I'm not saying it's a debt. I'm just saying that it's requiring this legislature to appropriate every year thereafter $5 million.
Okay, but I don't know if the...
Do you ever put that in your book? Did they do it? No, they didn't.
They didn't. The legislature didn't do it.
Yeah, they didn't do it. Right. And it was a bill that was passed, and, you know, I'm just wondering too, the legislature didn't do it, but, you know, did the governor ever tell us, Lester, every year to make sure that we fulfill this obligation that was by law? Nope. So everyone just said, forget it, right? And let's not do it. For at least for the last, 2003, 2004, 2 years thereafter. Okay, so I think DOC is a very important agency, and considering what's going on at DOC right now, the overcrowdedness and the conditions of it, you know, I'm surprised we're not in receivership already from this. So I think this body needs to be cautious about the situation that DOC is in right now, because we could go into receivership, and then it's going to cost us a whole lot more than $5 million a year, which we haven't been paying anyways. The other question I had is, earlier there was a comment about utilizing funds from the ARP. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the amount that was reiterated was $21 million for DPW, for paving, $40 million, GWA, $14 million. Can you give me those numbers again? I didn't get the full amount of how that $104 million from ARP money is going to be spent.
$21 million for DPW for Village Street paving, $40 million for GWA with a request for them to up that to $54 million, and $10 million for GMH. That's pretty much the bulk of it. So that's 60 plus 80, 90 out of the 104.
Okay, thank you, Lester. And this funding is coming from ARP funding. Now, I've noticed in the ARP reports that are given to the legislature, in January, under the new hospital, there was $104,843,733. Then in February, it went down to $17,864,000, and it sits in that position of $17,864,000. Is there any plans or that the governor is going to utilize this $17 million for something else to fund?
We are working very diligently because we don't want to return a dime. So, you know, there was a request for assistance from both the AG's office and the legislature for us to help. And having not gotten that assistance, we're trying to ensure that eligible ARP projects are found at the very last minute, and that the monies are put to good use and not returned.
So we are looking at about $17 million that she still has, correct?
I think I might be missing one or two, Senator Tydegui, but I think if GWA does the $54 million that they've said they could do, and we're making the additional $14 million available to them, I think we're going to be okay with drawing down the entirety of the 104.
But it's not been set in stone yet at this time, correct?
I'm trying to chisel it as we speak.
Okay. Is there any possibility of, asking the governor to revert some of that to the road repairs, considering that we're at hundreds of millions of dollars, in road repairs that are needed amongst the island, and 20 million is just like you said when we had this last conversation, Lester, that wasn't very much during the last budget bill. I mean, it is something, and I greatly appreciate the governor, pushing some money in that direction. But roads have been a major issue. So is there any possibility she may consider upping that 21 million?
We'd have to talk to DPW to find out if the capacity is there. If there is capacity and there are funds that we would like to be able to, that can be used before the end of the year, then we'll pull out all the stops, because we really don't want to return any money. So that's an option that we'll pursue, and thank you for the suggestion.
Well, I greatly appreciate it, and then sending that message. I also will be sending a letter to the governor requesting to consider that. Roads have always been...
Thank you.
Yeah, roads have always been an issue on this island, and it's not just an issue, it's a safety one that is caused many accidents and have actually taken lives because of the way the road has been in such disarray, or potholes that people have swerved and hit other people, ongoing traffic. Mr. Burns, you're ready to say something.
Just to remind you, everyone, that in your letter, please recognize that the funds have to be spent by December 31st.
Absolutely.
So,
well, obligated? Can it be obligated?
No, they have to be spent by
totally
December 30th.
spent.
And
okay.
that's what we're spending on my part of the chiseling. We're making sure that we can get all these bills and obligations in to spend the money by December 31st.
So, Mr. Burns, as we talked earlier, well, actually you weren't there, I think it was just Lester was here when we were talking about the territorial fund, the property tax from the TEF, and that by the end of the fiscal year, we'll probably still be in a negative of $17 million. What funded the TEF? What in FY26? What funded the TEF? Not what funded, I'm sorry, what was used from the TEF fund to appropriate?
Well, the TEF fund has certain appropriations in the budget, right? The biggest part of that is to DOE. And I advised DOE that we could only pay them what we received and what was left over in the fund, and we've been doing that. But apparently they got a lot of money, so that's okay.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. My next question goes to Gita. Can you give, yesterday when we were talking about the BPT for the military buildup contracts and trying to keep it at 5%, and actually lifting that to state for every military buildup construction contract. And then you mentioned that some of the information was on labor, and then I think BSP had something. So I appreciate it if you can provide what your findings are this morning on the military buildup contracts.
Okay, thank you, Senator. On the Bureau of Labor and Statistics page, Summary Economic Indicators, at the bottom of the sheet, there's a report on federal expenditures obligation, source usaspending.gov, for fiscal year 2025, and this is for amounts for projects
Tina,
5 million above.
Okay,
sorry,
yeah,
5 million above. Department of Defense expenditures are at approximately specific to Department of War was 3.297 97.5, 3 billion to 97.5. If they are at the 4% GRT, they would collect about 132 million. If they were at the 5% GRT, they would collect about 165. And again, I'm assuming that all of these contracts are going to pay the GRT. So between the 4 and the 5, you're looking at about a $33 million impact if we kept them at 5% using 2025 numbers.
That's $33 million difference. So if we kept them at 5%, then the collection 165. But if we lower it down to 4%, that amount of 130, that's $33 million. I don't know about you, but I know this, we've got a lot of roads that need repair. We have schools that need to be repaired. We need to build a new hospital. The military buildup is not expected to last very long. Maybe 3 to 4 more years. Is that true?
Yes.
So we stand to lose if you go 3 to 4 more years and add up $33 million a year in lost revenue that was supposedly supposed to help this island because of a military buildup, because the impact it's going to happen to this island. It was a lot easier to stomach, this change of situation on our island becoming one big military base or target in our head, to have some of our infrastructure being taken care of. Thank you to Gita for looking up those numbers to provide my colleagues those numbers to realize how much money you will be losing yearly from military buildup if you take it from 5% to 4%. And again, before my time is almost up, the BPT is not paid by the contractors. It's not paid by the businesses on Guam. It's paid by DOD or Department of War. They pay for it, not our businesses. So this is very disheartening. And all those other agencies that were shortchanged, public services that were needed for the most needy, those less fortunate, you've taken every opportunity for them. And that's not what we were put in this place to do, is to help our people of Guam. So 33 million, let that stick in everyone's heads and let the media know exactly how much by taking out this amendment in this bill. And I appreciate the governor again for seeing that $33 million is going to help our people. The cliff is coming, like somebody said. It is. And we just made it worse if this amendment is taken out of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Senator Duane, sir, you want to close it?
Susmasi, Mr. Chair, and certainly been an eventful morning and a lot of comments and expressions on the floor, so I felt compelled to put my point of view on the record. Lester, I want to thank you and the fiscal team for coming down, and of course, in recognition of the governor calling us back in to session on this new bill after having vetoed the sub-bill. You know, one thing that I've learned now in basically going on 20 some odd years of either the executive branch or the legislative branch is that a budget is a spending plan. It's passed in a moment in time that sets the structure for the government to operate for a fiscal year, and it is amendable throughout that fiscal year. And I want to thank you once again for recognizing that, we have, and Abby pointed this out well yesterday, We have appropriated revenues in subsequent fiscal years because of the consistent increase in corporate and in withholding and within BPT, basically starting from fiscal year 22. And now the governor's come down, and I think this is a reasonable ask because we would have probably be doing this in 2027 when the fiscal year closes, because this is more than likely a reality. And do what we've been doing, but doing it responsibly. This is responsible in response to the fact that some of us here believe that that 0.5 has invigorated our economy, that the withholding and the corporate continue to increase as well because of the additional 40, 60, whatever $million circulating in our economy. So, also want to recognize that this bill is a matter of law. The attempt by the governor, yes, to maintain the 4.5, that's the authority to send a sub-bill down and, introduce it, or the initial introduction, and say, I want to keep the 4.5. But the policy decision was made in law. We reaffirmed what was already in law. So we have done our diligence over the years. But I want to just once again put this on the record. With the 4.5, there is currently an $88 million in excess revenue. Corporate has gone up. Withholding has gone up. We're tracking what has happened in the past with still revenue in excess. And when we were sitting here a few weeks ago, the same members that are screaming to the top of their lungs how they want to appropriate for funding programs did that to the tune of $250 million. Attempted to. But no one raised the BPT to 8 or 9% to do it. No one went in and cut $100 or $150 million from anywhere else to come up with that. So yeah, there's an opportunity for lofty discussions and talk about, be careful what's going to happen with the election. I'm not concerned about that. I put my work on the table here. I vote the way I vote and let the voters vote the way they vote. But I'm not going to be threatened. Especially when those who make the most noise do nothing to fix it. But say, okay, we compromise, keep that 0.5, but introduce amendments for $250 million. That is what a good friend of mine in the 31st Guam Legislature taught me. That's disingenuous. You're so smart that you figured how to be disingenuous. You won't prioritize. You won't cut. You'll say $40 million is going to solve all of your problems. Yet you introduce $250 million worth of programs that you need 8 or 9 or 10% BPT for, but you don't correspondingly put that in the budget. That is disingenuous, and that is fagagang the people. That's why I didn't present the burden, fiscal team, to sit down with the governor and break out her pen. I don't think she would have done that. I think she just stamped veto on the front and sent it back and said, you're crazy, because you didn't do work here. You just sent down a proposal for $300 million, $250 million more in programs that you know our magic in the miscellaneous appropriations and said, Governor, figure it out. I'm going to go to the fiesta, I'm going to go to the fandango, and I'm going to go everywhere else and say, Samu gatsung sa. I got your back. Stambri, 50 million sa paragu. Oh yeah? Enggak na. Gagi budget. Fagagad. Besingani ang magait. That's what that is. So go ahead, go live. Tell everybody that you've solved all their problems, but it's those crazy Republicans and that governor who made a deal. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, I've seen through some good policies that the governor's asked us to do, and I've saw through to help on that. In fact, I voted on budgets on this floor with the former chairman, when his own colleagues on the other side would put all kinds of goodies in there but not vote for it because it's not enough. It doesn't do enough. You didn't do this, but never do the work to get it done. That's why this is the most mischievous thing we do, to be disingenuous a lot of times, and why there's rules on the floor. To stay away from those things.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't think we have a quorum here.
I have this floor, Mr. Chairman, and every other member has been given latitude upon latitude to make their statements. We've been accused on this floor from members on the other side of the aisle for leaving children out to starve and all kinds of crazy things that are said. I am blunting those comments with my time, Mr. Chair. And I have just as much right as anyone else who doesn't like the comments that are coming out, just like I sit and listen to their comments when I don't appreciate some of them that are disingenuous as well. Facts are facts, Mr. Speaker, and I will correct the record with real facts. As I close, I do have one statement, Lester, that I want to also say, that I believe we've always exercised with the tools available to us as enumerated in the June report of the reserve, and I'm sure you'll concur. The reserve in June was $62,048,607 on general fund, and was $7,412,796 in special funds, for a grand total of close to $70 million. In reserve funds. I commend you for that. But I don't believe that we're not going to lapse in 3 months with that amount of reserve. So we've done our best, as one of my good colleagues said, and we're going to do our best. But to say to the people of Guam out there that you have a better plan and we are just catering to the big business friends in the Chamber of Commerce that is made up mostly of medium to small sized businesses, is another disingenuous trick on this floor that I reject. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We've exhausted all colleagues who are here who want to be able to speak. Okay, I can't recess because we don't have so you can come up.
Mr. Speaker. Yes, we have exhausted the second round, which means the amendment portion is closed. We, however, will, at the request of Senator Montanani, convene. But prior to that, I've gotten a notification from Senator Borja. Can you put that on the record now? I know you will be going in also to handle the 2 o'clock, but please put that on the record now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the request of the Department of Education, we received a letter from them requesting to postpone the oversight hearing. Dr. Wampat is back, but she is out sick, and so they've requested for us to postpone it. I will call the hearing to order, but we will recess until she's available, which will be hopefully sometime next week, pending speakers.
Yes, Senator Chadigu, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the oversight of education, reaching out. But, for them to say that they can't send anybody else is ridiculous. I think their deputy, how many deputy superintendents do they have there? They can at least have a couple come down here to ask some of the, answer some of our questions we have with DOE. And you don't need the superintendent here to ask for the person in charge of their ASO or also what I think it's curriculum too as well, their deputy on curriculum. So I make a request that we still reach out to them and ask them to show up here to answer some of our questions.
I would defer to the chair on that.
I mean, we got the letter, Mr. Chair. I'm going to gavel in at 2 o'clock, and if they show, we'll proceed. But at least based on
So the chair will gavel in. If there's people here to address the issues, then we will proceed with that. Other than that, we will proceed with. Yes. Do you have anything else, Senator?
I'm just trying to understand. Gavel in. You mean we're going back into?
No. We are already going to allow the education chair at 2 o'clock to convene, and that was the plan. As myself as the chair, correct, in the public hearing room. And if there's nobody that shows up, because this is the letter that's been given to us, then he will recess that and reschedule it. If that happens, this is why I'm doing an announcement now, we will come back here at the request of the public health chair to have the hospital here to address issues that have come up in the media. And if there is a funding issue associated to that, we will also address that now that we're in the committee of the whole.
What time is that one, sir?
That will happen at 2 o'clock if the education is recessed. So the hospital will be notified to be here and be prepared to come in. If the education one doesn't go off, if the education one goes off, we will then move the hospital to tomorrow morning.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's why I was wondering. They're going to sit around. The hospital's
They are
going to
not
sit around.
going to sit around. They're busy
Okay,
people, but we will.
so-
They understand that they will show up in order to be able to be here and be ready. But if not, then they will go back to work and be ready for tomorrow morning.
Well, Mr. Chair, as the oversight chair of appropriation and this budget hearing, then I think, not just the oversight chair, but as well as, Senator Borja is the oversight chair of education, but I think you should make the request, since we're conducting this, this budget inquiry. I don't understand why we have to have a hearing on the other side. I mean, we're here to ask them about budget issues, which should be here in this body. I don't understand why we have to do it.
Thank you. I will
Will it
conduct
be
the business.
televised
I
too?
will conduct the business that is on the schedule. Senator Borja has an oversight scheduled, a continuation that's scheduled. I will allow that to happen in the public hearing room. After that, we will make a decision.
Mr. Chair, I do realize that sometimes because of video, to make sure that the public can
yes,
also
of course.
view it.
It is an open
Not
hearing.
usually.
Yes.
When we're in session, the AV has to switch over, but it takes quite a bit of time. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that it will be live, televised.
Senator, it will be live. It is announced as a hearing that has already been announced publicly. It's not to sit down in a circle with education. Yes, Senator Gumatauta.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to advise you that I did make attempts to engage legal on one more amendment into the drive or as part of the deliberations for the budget. I'm hoping that that would go through. Just did not get any response back, but I have submitted it.
Yeah, if you have submitted it, it will be effective at this
Mr.
time.
Chair.
We are in
Point
recess.
of order, Mr. Chair.